5 common grounds for misunderstanding between couples. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the reasons behind the misunderstandings that often crop up between couples. It's a hardcore fact that most couples do not see eye to eye in many aspects of their married life. It is because the mentality of a husband is different from his wife, and the mentality of a wife is different from a husband. It is these differences which lead to many misunderstandings between couples in the married life. This happens in almost all marriages. It is natural to have differences of opinion with your spouse. It is because as individuals you will definitely differ from your spouse in many ways. There is nothing wrong in being so. But when you let your differences assume large proportion in your relationship, it creates tons of misunderstandings between you. And when misunderstandings between you becomes a little too much, you feel very unhappy in your relationship. This video will be highlighting the reasons behind the misunderstandings that exist between you. The number one common reason for misunderstanding between you is not sorting out your relationship issues. Do you know the common reason behind misunderstandings that happen between you is because you do not sort out your relationship issues? Many a time you'll be misunderstood by your spouse, and many a time you'll misunderstand your spouse. This sort of a situation exists in many marriages. When you sort out your relationship issues with your spouse, your married life will be happy for you. But mostly this does not happen in your relationship. There is absolutely no sorting out your problems in your married life. When relationship problems are not sorted out, it could create a deep rift between you. This is the reason you should talk it out with your spouse. When you discuss your apprehensions and doubts with your spouse, the air between you is cleared and your relationship with your spouse is back to normalcy. But suppose you do not sort out your issues with your spouse. You begin to mind read your spouse. You assume many things about your spouse which makes you feel very unhappy about him or her. When your spouse is late from work, you assume many imaginary affairs behind it. When your spouse is angry with you, you assume lack of love behind it. When your spouse is silent, you assume that he or she has drifted away from you. Store your doubts within yourself without clarifying it with your spouse. This is very dangerous to your marriage, because mind reading your spouse is always one-sided. Your assumptions about your spouse are always from your point of view. Instead of mind reading your spouse, you should talk it out with him or her. This will do away with many of the misunderstandings that happen between you. The number two reason behind misunderstanding in a relationship is not informing. Most of you do not feel that it is your duty to inform your spouse about many things in your life. It is true that you do not owe an explanation to everyone for any of your actions. You are an independent individual with all rights to do things your way. This is only to the outside world. But you owe an explanation to your spouse. You should inform your spouse about the important decisions you have taken. You should inform your spouse if you will be late from work. You should inform your spouse about the investments you have made. When you inform your spouse about whatever happens in your life, it clears many of the misunderstandings that might otherwise creep up between you. The number three reason behind misunderstanding in your relationship is not explaining. Many a time, the reason behind the misunderstanding you experience with your spouse is because you do not explain. There are times you spurt out in anger against your spouse. You're sorry for your anger. You brood within yourself and take a vow never to hurt your spouse ever again. You never explain to your spouse the reason behind your anger. Your unexplained anger creates tons of resentment in the mind of your spouse. Your spouse feels that your anger is disgracing to his or her self-esteem. You're unhappy because you are unreasonably angry with your spouse. Your spouse is also angry, not understanding the reason behind your anger. If only you had explained the reason why you flashed out in anger to your spouse, this misunderstanding between you could have been averted. You also do not explain about the reasons you differ from your spouse in some issues in your relationship. This behavior is the root cause to the misunderstandings that creep up between you. The number four reason behind misunderstanding in a relationship is not understanding the viewpoint of your spouse. As a husband, you do not understand the viewpoint of your wife. You do not understand that your wife is very emotional and sensitive. And you do not also understand that because of the sensitive nature of your wife, her approach to various family issues will also be emotional. Your wife is also emotional enough to expect you to spend quality time with her. When you coolly ignore the emotional sentiments of your wife, she is frustrated that her womanly needs and wishes are discarded by you. You might be doing your work without interacting with your wife. From her point of view, your wife feels that you're withdrawn from her. Wife also commits many relationship blunders. As a woman, you do not understand the practical nature of your husband. As a man, your husband is bound to be rational and logical, something which you can never be. You're very loving towards your family, but your husband does not display his love. It is not as though your husband does not love his family. Your husband does love his family, but in a practical way. You might become emotional about some of your family issues, but in his practicality, your husband feels that you're being too demanding and sensitive about some non-existent family issue. Husband not understanding the emotions of his wife leads to misunderstandings in relationship. And wife assuming the practicality of her husband is complete lack of love leads to misunderstandings in relationship. This is the reason you should always look at your relationship issues from the viewpoint of your spouse. The number 5 reason for misunderstanding in your relationship is not listening to your spouse. You will understand your spouse only when you listen to him or her. You might feel you always listen to what your spouse has to say to you. Though you listen, your mind does not register what he or she has to tell you. When your mind does not register the message your spouse is trying to convey to you, it creates tons of misunderstanding between you. So, listen and register what your spouse has to convey to you. It is common to experience misunderstandings in your relationship. It just cannot be avoided in your married life. But the misunderstanding between you should be cleared then and there. If, on the other hand, you let the misunderstanding between you to accumulate, you will feel unhappy and discontent with your married life. Did this video make you understand the reasons behind the misunderstandings that crop up between you? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.